What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Spencer. Another episode of Delivering Sports. If you guys haven't noticed, the show's a little more sporadic. I used to be on Friday nights only, but because of my kind of job situation, I have to record kind of when I can. And today that happens to be on a Saturday. But today's a very special episode. Last one I did NBA awards with Kevin, and now I'm bringing in another special guest to do playoff predictions.
Very special.
Very special. So the first round just started. Well, first I'll introduce, I guess I should say, Mackenzie Rivers. We work at Straight Out of Vegas right now. Well, you've worked there a lot longer than me. I'm just kind of new.
We work at pregame.com.
Yeah, pregame.
One of the things we do is Straight Out of Vegas.
True. Very multifaceted. It's growing tremendously fast. But we're just going to get into it. We're going to go series by series, nothing too crazy. And we'll start with the first game of the day. I don't really care. Like, by the time this podcast is up, most of the games today will be done. But I don't think game one's indicative of all the series in all of these matchups. I think it's going to be a lot of close series in the first round, more than usual, I would say, especially in the East, because there's a lot of inexperienced teams. Maybe the first and second seed, you wouldn't expect it. But when you go down to the West and you look at, the Nuggets and Blazers and even the Clippers and Mavericks, as we're watching that right now, and it's a fairly close game. I think you'll see a lot of maybe 6-game series, 7 games, which is better for the fans. But we'll move on and we'll do the first game of the day. That was the Milwaukee Bucks. Chris Middleton obviously hit a heck of a shot in overtime to go up 1-0, and that's really big for them to not lose home court advantage, especially in a series last year that they lost, I think, handily. I think that was
5 games.
Yeah, 5-game series. They're big favorites now, of course, but where do you see this series going? I know it's not a perfect matchup for the Bucks, but I think they're primed to make a pretty deep postseason run this year.
Yeah, I agreed with Colin Cowherd that the Bucks could win a championship and they could lose in round 1. I don't think those are actually mutually exclusive. I mean, they're mutually exclusive, but I could see either scenario happening. And we saw it today. Giannis is a difficult matchup for him with Miami. He scored 25 points. He took 25 shots. One of our premium plays on Betting Predators, by the way, was Giannis under 26.5, alternative line, plus 170. So good winner for us over there at bettingpredators.com. But yeah, I don't see. I mean, Jimmy Butler is fast enough, and Bam Adebayo is big enough to where together they can form that wall that Toronto did famously and that they did last year. Jrue Holiday, I think, is going to be the key. I think if he's scoring 20 points a game, if he's a threat, then they win the series. Today he did enough. But what do you think? I mean, obviously it's going to be like minus 500 now for the Bucks getting a big one win.
The true onus is on Giannis at the end of the day. I mean, he's
historically,
but on the free throws is one thing too. Like, it's really bad that your star player can't really be put on the line, and he was at the end of that overtime game. But he's got to be better in the half court. It's about making shots at the end of the, like, it's the same thing with Russell Westbrook. He's really good in the fast break, and that's really great for the regular season because it's just looser play. It's much slower. It's still fast. I mean, it's the modern NBA. It's not going to be like old 80s basketball, but we're already seeing a bunch of these unders hit. The game is not going up and down, especially depending on the matchup. Like the 76ers would definitely be a slower one. And Giannis just has to find a way to be successful there. And I think he will. I think he's more ready, although I am a little worried about his comments before the series where he's like, I don't know if it's going to be different. Now, he's not saying that he's not confident in his team or anything, but to win a championship, first of all, maybe not just to get there, you gotta like believe it. Okay. And it doesn't sound like he believes it when he says something like that, even though he could easily be the most physically dominant player in the league if he isn't already. But I mean, just look at his size. It's insane.
It's not a statement I like. It's very defensive. It's saying like, I know that I'm great, but can we win a championship? I don't know. A lot of things got to fall into place.
That's not what you want your super max player to be saying.
But I will say this. I don't think all the best players in the league have to be the same. Like when Kevin Durant was coming up and he was getting more assists, he was better at ball handling. He's like, oh, well, eventually he's going to be LeBron. It's like, no, that's not how he's going to win. That's not how he's the best. Kevin Durant, he can be. And I think the same thing with Giannis. I don't think the trick is he's going to become Kawhi Leonard or Kobe or LeBron in the half court as far as, mid-range, post game. It's just not his thing. I think he's a defensive phenomenon that's also the best fast breaker in the league. And I think he can help a team win a championship, but I don't think he's going to suddenly become this great half court scorer, which what they need. I think they need Middleton like he did today and Holiday to take that role, but they're not the best players in the league. I mean, usually when you win a championship, you're relying on the best players in the league to fill those roles. So I think they're gonna challenge. I think they get past the Heat. I think they challenge the Nets but I don't think they're there yet. I don't think we're going to see them in the finals again.
At the very least for Milwaukee, and I've said this before, I think they match up the best against the Brooklyn Nets, maybe in the entire league. Drew Holiday on Kyrie, PJ Tucker on James Harden, and then Giannis on Kevin Durant.
Absolutely
you
nobody
can't really
guard Giannis on that team for the Nets.
Oh, yeah, he's going to have 40-plus points in the series, and it's going to be a lot harder for him in the Miami Heat. It really sucks. It's like their Achilles heel is the way Miami Heat plays, but I also think that's really important if they do want to make a championship run, that they exercise their demons in the first round of the playoffs. Very rarely do you get to do that. Miami is good, but they're not amazing. So it's a winnable series for them. It's going to be tough, and it may give them the confidence that they need, moving forward.
Last thing on this for me. Did you see the end of the game, the last minute of regulation? And did you think that Giannis traveled? Because like some of the things that Giannis gets away with, it just seems like it's insane to me. It's like there's a lot of violence in there. I could see how he get fouled and then travel, but that's not how they called it. He literally like took a step, jumped back, landed, and then a second later shot it, and they called a foul. I think it's
just physically difficult to challenge or to call him on anything. His body is so awkward.
It's different, right? It's different from everybody else.
And I think it's the same thing you're seeing with Zion, that they're going to have to learn to adjust to the way he plays because nobody else does it, which is interesting to think about. We'll move on to the next series. We don't want to spend too much time here delivering sports right quick. Second seed Brooklyn Nets are facing Boston, the 7th seed who won in that playing game, obviously, over the Wizards. A bit of a shocker. I think a lot of us thought that the Wizards would take that game the way those teams were trending at the end of the season. This is going to be a cakewalk. Look, the only advantage that Boston has is they're a good second chance point team, and the Brooklyn Nets are one of the worst at allowing second points per game. But that's not going to sway an entire series. I mean, if it does, that'd be the craziest statistic ever. The only stat anyone would ever look at is second chance points at that point. Everyone would gear their teams for that. But Jason Tatum will probably have a fine series. I think, Kevin Durant he may not even guard him that much. They may play him at power forward just so he doesn't have to have any effort on defense because all the rest of their guys are going to eat, and they're going to eat pretty well. Marcus Smart, you could say, could theoretically cancel out one of the other players, but then you still have a free range for one of them, which none of those guys have ever had that kind of ability to do, except for Kevin Durant on the Golden State Warriors, where just there's no way you're going to be able to double team all of them. And it's kind of the same situation. So if you want to compare those situations, I mean, offensively, they're just so gifted. There's no way Boston's going to be able to keep up here.
It's firepower. It's not a knife to a gunfight. It's like a really nice sniper in Jason Tatum against a tank or an army of tanks. It's just too much. They're going to score in the 120s, I think, on average for the series. And they're going to win. I will say this, though. If there was some way to make this wager, I think this is strong. I think this is pretty predictive. If Tatum scores 40 points a game, this is a 6 or 7 game series. If Tatum scores 30 points a game, and that's where he's going to be lined at, he was 31, I think, in his last game where he went off for 50. He scores 30 a game, they're going to win. Nets are going to win in 5. It's going to be close. That's most likely scenario. And if Tatum can't score 25 a game, they're going to get swept.
You think Kemba can?
I'd be shocked if any of those things didn't happen.
So you're saying that Kemba is going to step up really big here because he's going to get baptized by Kyrie Irving defensively?
No, I'm saying they're going to get swept or lose in 5. But I'm saying if Tatum can score 40 points a game, if he has like a historic series,
right? But
then they can push him.
He can push him with 40, but that's still, even if he scores 40, the rest of the team, someone else is going to have to step up.
True.
So you really believe that Kemba can do it in a certain capacity?
I'm not as down on Kemba as some people. I don't think that system works for point guards. We saw Kyrie struggle in it. I think it's kind of like the Clippers where you have a 2 and a 3 that, well, they don't have a 3 anymore in Jaylen Brown. I think he's fine. He's like the 40th best player in the league. I haven't changed my opinion much on Kemba Walker since going to Boston. He was okay in Charlotte. He could lead a terrible team almost to the playoffs, and he's okay in Boston. He's not that bad.
If Jaylen Brown was in this series, it'd actually be a lot more interesting. I think it'd be much closer to a 6-game series. Not that I think they would have any chance to win, but Jaylen Brown obviously is very talented.
I think they would have to win this. I mean, they would have a chance. This trio's never played together.
It's not easy. Yeah. It's certainly not easy. Easier said than done, right? Just to get a bunch of guys together. I predict this will probably be a 5-game series. It's probably pretty ugly. You get one great game out of Tatum, that'll probably push them far enough. Although I don't think a sweep is out of the question.
I'm gonna go sweep. I'm gonna say the most likely scenario.
Yeah, I think so too. I think they're gonna love to have that extra rest too, going into the second round of the playoffs. They got very lucky not facing the Wizards.
The great RJ Bell, our new boss since we hired you, he made a great point. He was like, "Do the Nets want to sweep?" Because they've played 8 games together. One Kevin Durant left in the first 10 minutes. Really 7 games, and 2 of them were against the Cavs. The last one in May was against the Bulls. Very, very scant elite competition this trio's played together. So just getting an extra game, like I wonder if they can forfeit, or not forfeit a game, but like win the game, but then like assign the win to the Celtics. I don't know. But it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense.
Maybe you rest one of the big 3 and in one of those games as it goes later on. If someone has a tight hamstring, sure, yeah, at that point, then you maybe lose a game and then you bring him back to finish it out. I don't know. It's an interesting theory. We'll have to wait and see. This one interesting on paper. I'm not sure how far it's going to go. Joel Embiid and Russell Westbrook, we know the kind of beef that they had, pretty well documented. They do not like each other. I think it started with
what are the high notes of that conflict? I don't recall.
I think Westbrook had waved goodbye to that, and then Joel Embiid, I think, posterized him, and they've just had this. I think Joel Embiid maybe won the next matchup, and he waved back. So they clearly don't like each other. It's nothing like the classic, rivalries back in the day.
It's not Dame Russ. It's not that bad.
Sure. But, still, it's a pretty exciting matchup at the end of the day. I think, Westbrook will probably have free reign to the basket. They don't really have any great defenders in the front court. I can think of the top of my head. I mean, they're
talking about Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons.
I mean, backcourt, I mean to say. Backcourt. Okay. Like anyone to guard Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook. So
yeah, they don't have
theoretically, they'll have pretty decent matchups. But at the same time, that means Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons will have nobody to guard them either. Not that Ben Simmons is an offensive juggernaut, and we know that very well. But they're just an all-around better team. Like the Wizards have given up so many points, and we already saw Boston slowed the game down slightly, and they won that game pretty well against the Wizards. It wasn't actually all that close. So you want to talk about a slow-paced team. I mean, they like to get on the fast break, but they're going to have a lot of half-court sets, screen, send it to Joel Embiid in the paint, those kinds of possessions. I think that's not going to bode well for the Wizards.
I think you nailed it. It's a bad matchup. The Wizards are the fastest paced team in the league by far.
By far, yeah.
And want to keep that up. The Sixers are able to stymie that. Ben Simmons can stop a lot of fast court breaks, and Joel Embiid's one of the best defenders interior in the league. And he's, a slow guy on offense to kind of, anchor that post. So they won all the games in the regular season. Don't see much different. I'd say most likely sweep. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they'll take one game. I think Westbrook and Bradley Beal can combine to have a really great game.
I'm going to amend my answer. Just thinking about how weird this season is, I think there's going to be more variability like last year's playoffs where you get some upsets. So I'll say at least 5
And they've been pretty hot too. I mean, they definitely have the momentum enough to not get swept. I think they'll be play strong enough there. We'll go the last match here in the East, and 4-seed Knicks, who have home court advantage, opened up as favorites and have moved to dogs as the line has moved here. Probably one of the most dramatic swings of all the series. No one's gone from favorites to dogs, I don't think. Not that I know of. And most of them are pretty separated. But it's close. They were slight favorites and then slight dogs, so it's not a huge swing necessarily. But I just think it's rare to see that people have that big of a difference of opinion where they think the series is going to go a different way.
What's interesting is that all the news has seemed to be pro Knicks, and the line is going the other way. I mean, the fact that Nate McMillan was fined isn't like 1-to-1, positive for the Knicks, but you think it would attract people like, oh yeah, the Knicks, the league does want them to advance. And we put a little, a couple dollars on that. Obviously, biggest market in North America or Mexico City, biggest market in the U.S. They would have a very vested interest in them advancing. But the Hawks just seem to be better in the gambler's mind. I'm neutral on it. I think, Trae Young in the playoffs for the first time would worry me if I wanted to back the Hawks. But the Knicks, they have Julius Randle and then a bunch of role players. So
it's interesting, right? Because think about playoff experience for both teams. The Hawks have Clint Capella, Lou Williams.
Yeah,
I think for playoff experience,
one of the worst all-time playoff players ever.
Yeah, but you can also say that for the Knicks too. I mean, they have Taj Gibson and Derrick Rose. Probably those are probably their 2 guys who have been in the playoffs. So
and they're like the 6th and 7th man.
I guess this is kind of an ideal matchup if you're a young team,
right?
I mean, you're matching someone with at least same amount of experience. Yeah, this is close, but I think the Knicks will probably take this series. I don't think it's going to be dominant because they've played a lot of close games in regular season, not just this season, but last season. A lot of overtime matchups, and I think there'll be at least one overtime game. That's a stupid prop. I doubt you could bet on something like that to have one overtime game in a series. But
we got back-to-back overtime games the last couple of days.
Yeah, the Knicks just aren't great shooters, but I mean, I think the Hawks depend maybe on the 3-ball a little too much, and you can't do that in the playoffs so much. Defense, it goes a long way, and I think that will carry the Knicks a bit. So if there's to me, obviously, there's a little bit of value if you can get the Knicks to win the series with plus money. But we'll go over now into the West as we go through the quite quickly. The Utah Jazz will face the Memphis Grizzlies, who had a very big win last night.
Congrats on that. I know you're rooting for the
yeah,
Grizz
I'm
there.
from Memphis, Tennessee, so obviously that was pretty exciting for me. And it just shows you that the NBA, like, you can do all the analytics you want. You can predict this, and that. I looked at referee analytics yesterday for this game. Yeah.
Jay Williams, I wrote it down, said, like, I've heard this many times, never on ESPN. Jay Williams was like, the calls that they're calling on Brook Lopez and John Morant, or who's that guy that got in foul trouble? Jaren Jackson Jr., they're like absurd or something, he said. Like, Jay Williams on ESPN said that. I was like, what? Like, I saw it. It seemed clear to me. It was... Yeah, a lot of iffy calls went the Warriors' direction, and they still lost. So congrats to the Grizzlies.
Yeah, they just grinded it out as they've kind of been known to do, or I guess they've gotten away from it. But still, the spirit of Memphis is, I think, a grindy type game, and John Morant just hit some nut shots. But
yeah,
we don't have
5 threes. That's
that's uncharacteristic of him too. And he hadn't played well in the other playing games too. He was pretty darn bad in the Spurs game. He shot like 7 for 20, and he was horrible in that first match. But he's only in the second season. You expect for him to make these kinds of ups and bounces. Amazing, but it's going to be a tough matchup for them in the first. I think Donovan Mitchell's out for game 1, so if there is any room for an upset, it's going to be they have to win game 1. They're not going to go down 0-2 and then just somehow end up in the back end of the series being in it. They can split the home series. I mean, the crowd was really into that. Will be really into the Memphis games. I mean, there's a lot of love there. Great fan base, a small market. And the Utah Jazz also have not proven anything. How far have they gotten in the playoffs? The second round, I think. That's as far as they've gotten.
Recently, I know they lost last year. Yeah. No, I think they've lost in the first round the last couple of years with Mitchell. Right. They lost in 7 to the Nuggets on that buzzer beater that didn't go in from Mike Conley. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this game will I think this would go 6 years. I don't think Memphis is going to lay down. They just play too hard. Taylor Jenkins also helps them rebound a lot. I think he does a great job of looking at tape and adjusting his game plan. With Donovan Mitchell out, Dillon Brooks can guard Mike Conley, which is pretty good. I mean, Mike Conley's not an offensive beast by anyone's standards, and Dillon Brooks has been fantastic defensively.
Probably guarded Jordan Clarkson for a lot of the game too.
True, and even Jordan Clarkson shooting like 42% this year. If he can keep him like maybe 38 or anywhere in the 30 percentile, they can steal a game here or there. Dillon Brooks shoots way too many shots.
I think they can win this series if Donovan Mitchell isn't right. And I mean, he scored like 35 a game in that first round series last year. Number 1 in the NBA. Without that, if you just take that out, I mean, it's not like 35 points subtracted from the team exactly, but it's a lot. It's a big deal. I think that's kind of underrated by the market. I haven't seen this line yet. What's the line?
That's a good question. I guess I should go on pregame.com. Not sponsored, but that'd be the best way to do it.
Affiliate.
Yeah, hold on. I almost got it up here. Shoot. So today is second. They play tomorrow, right, on Sunday. Is there series lines? I'm not sure. You'll have to look it up. You're better at that stuff than me.
I'm looking at their series line right now. Wow, minus 1250. That's pretty much the same as the Celtics. I don't not see it that way.
That's dramatic, right? And I also feel the same way about the Wizards series, by the way. I didn't get to mention that. The Wizards are like crazy dogs. I mean, I know they should be, but you're talking those odds are saying it's impossible for the most part. Like something traumatic would have to happen. I don't know if it's that dramatic in the Memphis series.
The one thing about the Jazz have been the most consistent team in the NBA.
Sure, yeah.
But that's the regular season. It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, so. and there was a lot of close matchups in the regular season between Memphis, and they didn't have Jaren Jackson for any of those too.
I will say pizza bet, worth $1 plus 700 on the Grizz. They're a live dog.
No doubt. We'll go on to the second seed. This is the one that everybody's talking about. The Phoenix facing the Lakers. The Lakers, I think, are still second favorite to win the title, and yet they're only slight favorites to win this series. And the money is pushing towards the Suns a lot.
Well, it did initially. When the line came out, it was Suns money. Now it's kind of ticking up as closer to game time is when the recreational bettors come in. Obviously, Los Angeles recreational bettors is the name of the game.
Yeah, because you're getting ready for game time. You go to a bar and you're like, oh, let's put money on the Lakers. It's interesting, though, because you wouldn't think that there'd be so many bets on the series rather than individual games. And I think there's going to be a lot more bets individually, which really, I think, actually makes the Knicks more interesting, the way that their series line has gone, because this is something you would expect maybe for the line to move backwards towards the Lakers just because they have so many fans and people bet on them. Yeah. I feel like the Knicks are the same way. I guess people just At the same time, the Lakers did win the championship last year, so they probably have a little more merit to that. But how do you see this working out? I mean, we don't know the health status of LeBron and Anthony Davis. It's a little bit of an overblown topic here and there, but I mean, they have had pretty bad recent injuries, and they didn't look great against the Warriors either.
It might have been Kendrick Perkins. It was one of the ESPN guys, and it wasn't on camera, was saying he's hearing really bad news for LeBron and his ankle situation. And watching the games, I didn't think he was very good against the Warriors. He only scored 21, shot 7 for 17. He hit the big shot. He was there for his guys, give him credit for that. But I don't think he's right. And if he's not right, the Suns, again, live dog for sure. Think about this. Last time Chris Paul was a 3 seed or better, or he led a team, or the last 2 times, he played the Spurs 2016-15, 1-7, beat the defending champions. Then he's with the Rockets. They got to go against the defending champions. Now he's a 2 seed, first round, defending champions. It's tough business in the West.
Yeah, he's had a tough go at it. Although I will say this, I think the Lakers would rather play the Phoenix Suns and the Utah Jazz in the first round, because I think they could. I think they will beat both of those teams. I actually do think the Lakers will advance in this series, just because the Suns are so young. I mean, Chris Paul has playoff experience, but he's never been there and done that. Not to that extent. Devin Booker's never won more than 20 games past last season. And then you go down the list of the other guys are just rookies that barely know how to play the game. That definitely bodes well for the Lakers there. So as long as you can get consistent performances out of them, and you always got to believe that LeBron will be there. If there is a concern for the Lakers, it is Anthony Davis. He didn't come into the season in shape. It kind of feels like he got his championship and he feels really good about that, and maybe a little too good. Now, you can look at it from a human standpoint of, okay, you won a championship. You only have 3 months off. You kind of want to enjoy it. But to be back-to-back champions, you may have to do more than that, where you have to sacrifice an entire summer of celebration to get yourself ready.
Well, it wasn't the summer. It was October, November,
I know,
December.
right?
Usually the summer.
Yeah, I don't know. So we'll have to see. I think this will be – I really don't even see this going to 7 games, honestly.
I think Lakers in 6 is most likely. Anthony Davis, I mean, he's had ups and downs this season, but the last time he played the Suns, it was clear they don't have anybody for him.
No, they just
Ayton's
don't.
a baby, compared to Anthony Davis at this point. So
yeah, the big man dominated last offseason too, and I think Ayton will actually have his time. I know everyone doesn't like him because he was drafted over Luka Doncic, but at the same time, I think Ayton will have all-star appearances at least in his career. I don't know if you can say that about.
I wonder what the line would be on that. I think that's maybe 50-50.
I remember make an all-star game.
Yeah, he's going to be above average player for the next 10 years, but he might make an all-star team.
Yeah, I think as a lot of these centers kind of go out to, like Rudy Gobert, when he gets older, he's not going to make all-star games like that anymore. Yeah. As long as he doesn't win Defensive Player of the Year, you kind of have to give it to that point. But okay, the next one's super interesting. The Clippers and the Mavericks. It gets real close when you get closer inside the Western Conference here.
We got the game up.
I know. Yeah, we're watching as we go on. You guys obviously will be in a different spot when you listen to the podcast on this. But, look, the Clippers have all the pressure on them, and that does not suit well. I mean, they have very little experience on the court together. Serge Ibaka came back the last 2 games. Kawhi Leonard has been in and out of the lineup basically the entire year. Paul George even has missed more games than I thought he did this season. I kind of thought he was been a rock for them, but he's got a lot of injuries throughout the season. And you can go down to Patrick Beverley, too. I mean, so many guys on the roster. So it'll be interesting to see if they know how to play with each other.
Paul George has had 2 of the biggest discrepancies on how good he played in the regular season and how bad he played in the playoffs in back-to-back years. That OKC year, he was in the MVP conversation. And then they played the Blazers in the 4th quarter of the 5th game, the elimination game. He couldn't handle the ball. Right now, and last year, we don't even have to talk about it. He was shooting off the side of the backboard in Game 7. This is how he's starting the playoffs in 2021. 2 for 9, 0 for 4 from 3, only 2 assists. Well, I mean, is it just the nerves? I mean, he's sleeping in his own bed, right? That was a big problem last year.
For sure. I don't know what it is with him, and maybe this will be his year to do it. I think there's too much pressure on them, and I think they're just more talented than the Dallas Mavericks at the end of the day. But they're going to give him trouble. This is not going to be a sweep.
Right now, down by 8. I think this game. I think this is more likely to go 7. I think.
Do you think they at the end of the season to avoid the Lakers?
I don't understand that at all. We didn't know if the Lakers were going to be on the left or right side of the.
It's true, but I mean, you would have. I'm guessing if they were to do it, they're operating on the idea that the Lakers would have won against the Warriors because they're a better team. I mean, that's a calculated risk at least.
What they knew for sure is that they were going to face the Dallas and not Portland. So I mean, it seems like that was that would be the front of mind. And here's why I don't believe it. Ty Lue with the Cavs every single year. I mean, this is why LeBron is the king of PR. Like whatever he does, he gets it. It's roses. They sat the last 2 games. I never heard that they were tanking.
Yeah.
I mean, they finished 4th one year and they could have been 3rd, but they tanked the last 2 games. I never heard they were tanking to play the freaking, I don't know who it would have been.
Sure. And even if they were, by the way, I
Bulls.
don't think that's such a bad strategy. You want to play the better
That's-
teams as late
that's a
as
good point,
possible
too.
in the playoffs, don't you?
It's about championships. The goal is championships.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Not about your ego with your
I
LA
don't care about the
counterpart.
fans. I mean, if I'm a player, I
Sure.
don't care about my public image. Like, I think that's how the best separate themselves. It's single-minded focus. If you think there's a 5% chance better to win the championship if you don't beat the Thunder the last game of the season, then don't beat them. I mean, Kobe, I think he said it best. At the end of the day, I don't care how you did it. Show me what you did.
Right. I could see this going 7 games. I don't think the Clippers wanted to, but I think they're going to have to figure it out as the series goes along. And I think by the time Game 7 comes around, Kawhi and PG will be enough to stop. Because look, the Dallas Mavericks outside of Luka Doncic, Porzingis he's just not playing well. He's just not what they wanted.
He just never turned out to be the all-star.
Yeah, and Tim Hardaway
that we thought he
Jr.
would be.
is just kind of floating around. He's not an all-star. He's okay. He gets overpaid. Maxi Kleber is just not very good, and they depend on those kinds of guys.
Yeah, Josh Richardson's another one. It's just like a B player, not a player.
Here, the very last series, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that we haven't gotten over just
We're
quite.
doing second round too, right?
No, just first round matchups, because otherwise you're going to start predicting like, oh, they're going to win, and if they don't, then it's like, okay, we're just talking about theoretical situations. The Denver Nuggets and the Portland Trail Blazers, most likely the best matchup in the first round, the closest one. This is a 7-game series written all over it. It's crazy to think that when Jamal Murray went down, the doubt seeped in that the Nuggets would drop. They're going to have a hard time maybe making the playoffs or to avoid the play-in game at least. It's like they got better in some ways. I don't think that's necessarily true. I wouldn't say that they're a better team because Jamal Murray's not playing. I think you always need that kind of thing in the playoffs, but Jokic certainly has stepped up in the absence, and he still has somehow found a way to pace himself too, by the way. The guy has done a really good job of that. I don't think he takes the best care of his body, but at the same time, if it works for him, the way he plays, and he's a very productive player.
It's about championships. Like when people say, oh, Shaq didn't come into the season mid-form. If he thought he was going to have a better life, a more successful year, if he did what he did in the summer and got himself in shape during the season, well, there's only one way to judge how successful that strategy was. Did he win a championship at the end of the year? And he won 3 in a row because he was the best player in the world at that point.
And everywhere, too. He went anywhere.
And Jokic is in pretty good shape, a lot better than he was entering the league.
He definitely takes better care of
and it's like you only have so many hours in the day. So like Larry Bird would spend, shoot 100 free throws for every time he missed. Is that the best use of your time when you go from an 89 to a 90% shooter?
But
again, it's lifestyle. It's what he did. It was his
relationship with the game.
His relationship with like the basketball. Like, how could you let me down?
Yeah.
And I think everybody's different. And I think Jokic is one of a kind. In NBA history, people say Bill Walton, this, that, not even close as far as handling the ball, passing. That said, I'm leaning towards the Blazers because they do have their whole squad in type. Basketball in the playoffs is often about bringing the ball up, point guard play. They don't have anybody to mess with Dame Lillard or CJ McCollum. So I'm leaning Blazers. The reason I wouldn't bet them is because if you look at record against winning teams, we did this study for RJ, dead last by far, against expectations and straight up against winning teams this year. So
yeah, I think the
Nuggets
big
are one of
factor in
those.
this one will be desperation. Desperation is very valuable in the playoffs. At the end of the day, the Nuggets have nothing to prove. They know they're not going to win a championship.
And they know they're not.
I mean, they may believe that, but realistically speaking, they're just not.
Right.
And the Portland Trailblazers, I mean, that big article came out. I forget. I think it was Yahoo Sports. I forget the guy's
Chris
name.
Haynes,
Yeah, he came out with the article that, we're getting close to a blow up here. If they get bounced in the first round, I mean, that story just looks huge,
Yeah, that's a great point. If the Nuggets lose, it's not an assessment on how good they are. They don't have their best guard. But if the Blazers lose, project didn't work, start over.
Yeah, you got to trade Dame, maybe trade CJ McCollum.
And obviously, they wouldn't want to trade Dame, but if I'm Dame Lillard, I only got a couple of years left in my career. Why not?
I mean, this is the thing. I mean, there's either 2 outcomes in a season for me. You either win a championship or you do not.
I agree.
Making it to the conference finals, even, or making it to the quarterfinals, let's say on a consistent basis, it's not. There's no value in it. It doesn't matter.
I would disagree slightly. There's some value in it because your organization gets those reps in the playoffs. Like the Mavericks, they were a B team for 10, 15 years. They ended up 1 year, got lucky, got some breaks. LeBron scored 8 points in a game for some reason. in the finals, which we don't talk about anymore.
Yeah, the only problem with that theory, though, is that most of the teams that have won championships in the past 10 years have been constructed like the season of.
Yeah. No,
So I get what you're saying. And yes, if you always
that's why I said
want
there's some
playoff-
value to it. I don't think that should be your goal as
Yeah,
an organization.
for sure. And I mean, if this is going to keep happening to them where they just can't get it done, you're wasting everybody's time at that point. You might as well start over, and which is unfortunate. You know, it would be really bad for their ticket sales. There's a lot of business that goes into it more than just winning championships, and
Right.
it's easier said than done with us sitting here.
Yeah,
to
the
see
organization's
it.
goal is probably different from players in that
Yeah,
way.
I mean, if you trade all those players away, I mean, you're a small market team. You know, they do have a championship, so they're not like one of the smallest ones, but
Yeah, and they're
certainly
only
the-
professional sports in Oregon, so that helps.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, we'll do our last little thing here is our finals predictions.
Okay.
What do you think?
The two most hated teams, maybe in NBA history, the Brooklyn Nets and the LA Clippers, in my opinion, will meet in the finals. I think the Nets are gonna. Nope, just changed my mind. I think that. Nope, I changed my mind again.
Wow.
Nets in 6. Kevin Durant gets fouled. They don't call it, but this time he makes it anyway.
Wow. I will agree with you. The Nets, I think they kind of walk through. Unless Milwaukee can do it.
Milwaukee's
I
gonna be the
think
one
Milwaukee
series.
can do it. But the other part of it is we can look on paper all the time. Milwaukee simply has not done it since then. So it's hard to give them those kinds of expectations given how talented that Brooklyn is. So I think Brooklyn will have an easy time going to the finals. A great first round matchup there. And then we'll see what happens. I mean, if they
So
get
who
the
you
Miami Heat, oh my gosh.
Who's yours? Who are you picking?
So I got Brooklyn Nets, and on the other side, I have the Lakers. I just think that they're going to be able to go through. The top teams in the West are they're there because of injuries for the most part and because of the shortened season. Seeding just doesn't matter, especially now. Maybe next year when everybody's back and you have full capacity, like those kinds of things will matter more. Like I get that there is fans like 10,000, but that's a far cry away from full capacity. It's different no matter what you want to say. The environment is different. The broadcast team is like this. The energy of the game is so drastically different. So I don't think the Lakers having to play these away games in the beginning against Phoenix, again, not even a huge franchise. Is there any Phoenix Suns fans? Yeah.
There's one.
Yeah.
There's that one that yelled at Robert Sarver and called him like I don't know. It's like an old lady.
Yeah.
He just really cared about the Suns for some reason.
Yeah, my prediction is the Nets in 7. I don't think I just think the Lakers will have health problems at some point. It could be maybe not LeBron and AD. It could be Dennis Schroeder. It could be Montrezl Harrell. It just doesn't feel like they can play long series. And I think they're going to have to play a few of them just to get there, which will be massive advantage to the Brooklyn Nets, who will likely have probably 5-game series unless they in the conference finals may be their hardest challenge. Even then, I think if they play the 76ers, maybe 6 games. So you're talking about the Lakers maybe playing 28 or maybe they're not going 7 every single time. Let's say 25 games versus 12 or 15. That's basically all the edge they may need. That's the advantage of playing in the East. LeBron knows about that more than anybody. He was able to get to the finals so many times simply because he played in the East. And I think that trend still exists.
Reason I'll go with the Clippers are one of the more.
I hope they bet on the Clippers to make the finals.
Yeah, you got plus 300. Some value.
Yeah.
Kawhi just owns LeBron. You know, he beat him 13 out of 18 times since the start of the finals when they matched up. So
yeah, no doubt.
I think he has his number. I do.
Nice, short and sweet. A good 30-minute episode of NBA playoff predictions. Thanks for joining Mackenzie on the Delivering Sports Show. Great addition. Well, I'll get back to football when it's relevant. I can't talk about Tim Tebow forever. It's just not in my blood. I wouldn't sell my soul like that. I get it because it's different. National and podcast are drastically different. That's the advantage of a podcast. You kind of can do that. But anyways, that's going to do it for today's video or podcast.